new Sonus Faber Serafino speakers that you can see there behind me are that really interesting mixture of new-old, where a manufacturer takes one of their heritage products, I think from 3 decades ago, in this instance, and brings it right up to date with all of their latest thinking and most modern technologies, while retaining some of what made that original speaker special in the first place. And I think in this instance, the overall result of that is something pretty special, because you have a speaker that has some of that vintage, listen to them all day type of character, but with an overall performance level, a modern performance level that's right up here, while still having that absolutely stunning, famous, classic heritage Sonus Faber styling, but again, with a finish quality and build quality and everything involved overall, up here type of speaker. I think we have to start with the visuals, and there may be some of you that prefer a different speaker aesthetic, of course, but really, let's be honest, from the front, from the side, from the top, and even from the back, these are stunning looking speakers. And it's a shame really that from the front, when you're sitting down and listening, you can't really appreciate their amazing curved shape. And it was only really while I was shooting the B-roll for this review video that I got to take a proper look at the speakers from all of these really interesting angles, because when they arrived, I installed them into the taped out square boxes that you can see on the floor, and I haven't really touched them since. So it's been difficult to fully appreciate their beautiful styling until now. And it also, I suppose, shows their unfussy nature to a point, but don't let that comment fool you, because these are speakers that I would call, or go in the category at least, of politely, brutally honest, and we will get to that. We have to talk about the finish quality and the cabinet itself. There are 9 layers of natural wood used that's matched according to the grain, and then the speakers are hand painted, finished with 9 coats of lacquer. When you think of a company the size of Sonus Faber, there's still a lot going on by hand, and I really like that. I can't help but like that. And there is also quite a lot of aluminium going on here as well. Some you can see and some you can't see. But for the main speaker's basic specifications, the Serafino are a 3.5 or 3.5 way design. They are 4 ohms with a 90 decibel sensitivity, so fairly easy-ish to drive. They have dual 180mm or 7-inch bass drivers, a single 150mm or 6-inch mid-range driver, and then a 28mm or 1-inch tweeter. A power rating of up to 300 watts, which seems pretty crazy to me when I've been driving them with a big Macintosh amplifier that I didn't see get much above 40 watts on the VU meter, even playing bonkers loud. And each speaker weighs 48.5 kilograms. So these are seriously heavy, well-built things. Now, one very cool thing that I was given as part of this review is this huge box, which is full of goodies. Now, those goodies are not chocolate, and sadly, it's not a box full of cash. This is, Christ, it's so big, a box full of components that make up, obviously, the Serafino and other speakers from the new Homage range. What's really interesting about this is obviously you can kind of get hands-on with some of the components and parts and look at them and feel them in your hands. And I'm sure this type of thing or box is really intended for dealers to show their customers, I suppose, where that customer's hard-earned money is going in terms of, the technologies of a speaker. But the cool thing about me having this is that I can show you these parts in some more detail. Now, if you'd like to read all of the information on the lid of this box, pause the video now. If not, I'll do my best to talk you through most of it as best as I can. And let's start with the top and work down, so starting with the tweeter, which is the famous Sonus Faber DAD tweeter, which employs a soft dome, but then uses clever technology to stop the soft dome tweeter rolling off too early. I assume to try and get the dual benefits of the sweetness of sound of a soft dome tweeter, but still with sparkle and very high frequency details. I have listened to a number of DAD tweeters and a number of more affordable Sonus Faber speakers, and the tweeter's always interesting. Sometimes it's quite lively, other times it's a bit softer, but it hasn't always been my favourite tweeter, if I'm being honest, through the other speakers that I've listened to. But the tweeter that's used in the Serafino speakers makes perfect sense to me, because it's everything that they claim it will be. It has a real softness and delicacy and sweetness to the way it presents high frequency information, which makes them softer and more pleasing to hear. But there's still liveliness there, there's still energy to the high frequencies, the details can really pop, and there's sparkle and higher frequency information in the music too, or at least as high, up in frequency that I can listen to. So that's all really impressive. And also the bit that's impressive is, doesn't matter really what content you're listening to or how loud you're playing to a certain point, the treble never, and I mean never, becomes strident. Moving down to the mid-range driver, you can very clearly see that it has a paper cone and it has an improved phase plug for better behavior up into the crossover region, and I assume the crossover can be made more simplistic. And this is a really quite substantial and heavy mid-range driver. But what's probably more interesting about the mid-range driver design is what I actually can't show you, and that is Sonus Faber's intoner technology, which was actually explained to me at the recent Munich high-end show by the speaker's designer, Livio Cucuzza. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Livio. And he was explaining it to me, but that was for the brand new Stradivari speakers from Sonus Faber, £50,000 speakers. And yet that intoner technology is still used here in the Serafino speakers, and they cost less than half. And intoner technology is interesting, and I hope I've understood this correctly or explained this correctly, in that intoner is the use of a dual rear chamber for the mid-range driver. So as the pressure in the first chamber builds up, especially around the driver's resonant frequency, that would normally affect the impedance behavior of the driver and then affect distortion and the clarity of sound, where the dual chamber system allows the pressure to be relieved from the first chamber into the second chamber, so that the impedance behavior of the mid-range driver stays more consistent, and then you get a cleaner, clearer, maybe more natural sounding vocal. And that's really interesting because the vocal delivery from the Serafinos is definitely one of its key strengths for several reasons. For me, it sounds tight and focused, really tight and focused, but at the same time relaxed and easygoing. And there's also a really nice tone and organic quality to it. Some may attribute that to paper, a paper driver, but there's definitely always much more to it. But more impressive and interesting than that is the overall balance of the way the vocals are presented, always beyond the speakers, slightly behind the speakers, very audiophile in that sense. So you always feel like you're looking through the speakers onto a vocal performance, live maybe at times, performance happening in front of you. So the work with the driver, the work with the intoner dual chamber system, it does seem to work to deliver, a very standout, fantastic vocal, regardless of male or female, old or new music. For the bass drivers, in the goodies box is a half cutout of the driver's cone material, which is paper on both sides with a foam center. And the Serafino is supposed to have a new motor system for improved bass performance, which is also supposed to be weight balanced too, to stop any additional vibrations from the driver's mechanics adding itself to the cabinet, which seems pretty cool to me. On the rear is what's called Stealth Ultraflex, which is an aluminium shaped and styled grille, for want of a better word, which acts as an extension to the rear ports to better control the airflow out of the back of the speaker. When you look very closely at it, you can see there is a lot of intricate details going on here in the grooves all cut in, which I assume is all there for performance reasons, more so than looks, because this is the rear of the speaker, so you don't see it 99.999% of the time. I was extremely impressed for how tight and controlled the overall bass delivery is. And with the right amplifier, it could sound really quite full and punchy. And yet with another amplifier, the bass was smooth and controlled and authoritative, being more about scale and the foundation to the music, almost small subwoofer-like. More important for me is it had nice speed and articulation and information, but also a nice kind of rounded, boppy and bouncy character, which makes all the difference when you listen to certain types of music. So a nice mixture of detail, speed, articulation, a nice substantial amount of bass, and then with a nice bouncy character. But on the amount of bass, for me, I would class it as satisfying, a good amount of bass, but also maybe more on the modest size. There's not, huge amounts of bass, it's just a nice amount, which probably is by design, because with a speaker like this, of this type of size, it makes them flexible for their placement. You know, suitable for using smaller rooms, maybe like this one, or suitable for using maybe up against walls and maybe even in corners of rooms you would get away with it, which makes the Serafino very real world and flexible for the type of room that you will use them in. And then for sound quality, I've already mentioned some key individual aspects, treble, vocals, bass about the speakers. But one of the big standout strengths for me with the Serafino speakers is their soundstage, or their overall intended sound delivery. I think they're designed to produce a very impressive audiophile soundstage. What do I mean by that? I mean a soundstage that's really layered for starters, but it has that depth characteristic going on where you look at the performance happening in front of you and you see it through the speakers. So you look through the speakers onto the music happening in front of you or beyond the speakers. And this stands out mostly with the vocals. As I mentioned before, you always look through the speakers onto the vocals, and the vocals always seem like they're just behind, or more so behind, the speakers. So that is a real audiophile presentation I think that a lot of people would really enjoy, especially when the vocals are as good as they are, tight and focused, or with a nice tone to them. Relaxed, graceful, regardless of volume, and also regardless of the music's content. So whether it's modern screechy female or maybe older, big male baritone, it doesn't really matter. That composure, the relaxed character always stays there. And for me, the big test I always use is, Lady Blackbird, Black Acid Soul album, because she really belts it out in some of those songs, and it can be on the edge sometimes with some speakers, but not with these at all. Not with the Serafinos. They control that vocal. They take care of that, all important key region of the music, and then deliver it with a lovely gracefulness and smoothness, but with character and energy. And also stand out about the Serafinos is their timing, because it's exquisite, because they combine a very fast sound that gives you all of the music's details, all of it, but with smoothness and grace. So you never feel beat up by the music or never shortchanged by it either. But for me, the really big sonic characteristic that I've appreciated most about the Serafino speakers, this is an interesting one, is that they are politely, brutally honest to the hi-fi system sound quality that feeds into them. But at the same time, they are not brutally, ruthlessly honest to the music that you listen to. It's a really interesting mixture there. So they're very honest, they're very transparent. You can hear all of the different things that you do with the hi-fi system. And I am always changing things. This is how I noticed this. But at the same time, you enjoy the listening sessions that you're having. And I've listened to these speakers a lot over a number of weeks, and I've enjoyed every single listening session because the standard of every single listening session has been really, really high. Now, there has been some that have been much better listening sessions than others, but there's never been a listening session where I've felt beat up or I haven't enjoyed the music at all. And there's something definitely in that, because I think other modern high-end performance speakers are a bit more about being brutally honest, whereas these are politely, brutally honest. And there really is a difference there. Now, I will say on that you will need a very good hi-fi system, I think, to hear the best of what these speakers can offer. But at the same time, I've listened to them with a whole range of gear, starting with, or the lowest price product, probably the Audiolab 9000A integrated amplifier, which is less than £2,000 integrated amplifier, so less than 1/10 of the cost, I think, of the speakers, if my maths is correct. And they still sounded fantastic through that amplifier. Now, that isn't particularly good integrated for the price, but at the same time, I think it just shows the character of these speakers. It's just a bit more easygoing, it's a bit more forgiving, but at the same time, they're not. They show you everything. So that's a fantastic mixture, and hard to talk about, hard to explain, but one that I've really, really enjoyed. But especially as a reviewer, when you're trying to listen between the different products that's under review, and yet you can just still enjoy all the music that you're listening to. But what about potential negatives? That's a hard one. You kind of get into nitpicking when you're with, products and speakers at this kind of level. But I do think that maybe some audiophiles might find them to be a little bit too polite with their overall dynamic liveliness. Because I think as a speaker, they're designed for that smooth, relaxed, quite easygoing sound, and not too much, but quite easygoing type of sound. Whereas other speakers or systems might create a sound that has a bit more raw live energy, so like a more of a tension, like lively on the edge type of sound. And the only reason I say that is because I definitely didn't have music delivery that's on that dynamic lively edge with these speakers and the systems that I've had here as much as I did recently with the Bowers & Wilkins 803 D4 with the Chord Electronics Ultima Pre and Power. Now that was a couple of months ago, so I'm going from audio memory here, so do take that into account. And obviously that's with a different system, so maybe the Serafino speakers would sound more like that, being driven through the Chord Ultima pairing, because that's what that system is about, liveliness and speed and and energy. So there's definitely something in that. But also thinking back to the Griffin EOS 2 speakers, and they definitely had more kind of bite and liveliness in their upper frequencies, whereas the Serafinos are definitely smoother and more graceful in that kind of upper frequency energy. So there are some key differences going on here between speakers around the same kind of price points and levels. So yeah, some might prefer that more lively dynamic edge, whereas other audiophiles definitely prefer the more smooth, easygoing, not have to worry quite as much type of presentation. Now, of course, all of this technology, build quality, beautiful styling and design, general loveliness does not come cheap. The Serafino speakers cost £22,000. So that is a lot of money for hi-fi speakers. You can buy a whole host of larger, smaller, bigger, different speakers for that price. Of course you can. So why would you buy the Sonus Faber Serafino over all of those other choices? Well, I think the decision could be made easy for you if you love the brand or you love the look and the styling of Sonus Faber speakers, because they are unique. The shape, the way they're finished, just the look, everything about them stands out. And if you like that type of design and you're considering stepping up to this type of speaker, the build quality, the look, the finish, everything will not disappoint you. Everything is exquisitely done. And I also think they're real world size. Yes, they are a little bit deeper maybe than some floor standing speakers, but they're actually quite real world size. They're not as big as I was expecting them to be, I suppose is what I'm getting at. And if you like the look and like the size, well then the Sonics, you definitely won't be disappointed by the Sonics, for their intended character, because I actually can't really find too much fault in them, actually no fault actually really, for their intended character, which is definitely slightly warmer and more easygoing than something like a Bowers 803, and definitely a bit softer and a bit more relaxed going in the higher frequencies than something like a Griffin EOS 2. Outside of that, the comparisons obviously get a bit more personal and into what you particularly like, because those are all great speakers. But on that, I've had a real blast actually the number of weeks I've had the Serafino speakers here, and I have not wanted to end this review. At the end of a review, you have to break a whole system down to do all the B-roll video and everything, and I've longed this one out as much as possible, because the speakers, combined with the system that I have behind me with the the rail subwoofers, I've had some absolutely amazing listening sessions with this system. It's been really, really killer, and of course the speakers are fundamental to that. So yeah, the Serafinos are fantastic. I can't find any other word for them other than fantastic. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful. If you enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you appreciate my take on hi-fi products and this type of review style, please subscribe to the channel.